All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for dropping in, and we will keep this right at half an hour. I know we've all got other things that need to be done, but we'll try to make this as productive a half an hour as we can. I think this is the fifth lunch with Get Hiking that we've done. Covered a variety of topics, and today we're going to talk about longer hikes. In part, because we're getting into mid-fall, the weather is a little bit more conducive to getting out and taking longer hikes. And so we're going to look at some options. There are a variety of types of options. Some of them are going to be specific, and some of them will give you a general idea of where you can go and then how to kind of narrow down the type of hike that you want to do. So that will become apparent as we go along here. So we're going to start out with a training hike that I've used quite a bit for different purposes. I used to train a group that did a charity hike. They were training to do a 28-mile hike in one day. And this was one of the training hikes that we did. One of the things I like about it is it's a hike that you can do. We did it twice because there's a 6-mile option, and that would be the company mill portion. A lot of you may be familiar with this particular trail. It's about 6 miles. It's a lollipop loop that starts from the I-40 entrance to Umstead State Park. And the first mile of this hike goes down to Crabtree Creek. It's one of the more popular sections of trail in the park. But once you cross the bridge over Crabtree Creek and begin the loop itself, traffic thins out a lot. The thing that I like about this hike is this is a 6-mile hike. You can tack on the loop portion of the Sycamore Trail, and you can get about a 10-mile hike out of it. And once you get into the middle of the park, one of the nice things is the traffic really thins out, and you're in an especially nice area. The Sycamore section in particular, I think it runs along Sycamore Creek for probably less than a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile. But if you hit it after a rain or even during a rain, it's like being in the mountains. It's just a really awesome little stretch of trail. And a lot of this is fairly challenging. There's a lot of up and down. It's a trail that's been used quite a bit. So the trail is not in some spots, it's pretty eroded. The first section down to the creek is actually, they're starting to do some rerouting. Once you get past that first stretch, though, it's not too bad, but it's really a pretty awesome stretch of trail. And right now, color is beginning to hit. It's about like it is in the photo where people are sitting on the bridge. This is actually the link between the company mill and Sycamore Trail. And I should tell you that I'm going to have a link at the end where you can get specifics on how to hike the trails that we're going to talk about. It's from a blog post from a couple weeks ago. You can click onto the post and it will take you to all kinds of information that'll help you figure out the trailhead and specifics for hiking the trail. So one of the reasons I like the Yuari National Forest, and we have 2 hikes in the Yuaris, is that it's pretty centrally located between Charlotte, the Triad, and the Triangle. I'm guessing it probably, from Charlotte, it's about an hour's drive, the Triad less than that, and the Triangle a little bit longer, depending on where you're going in the forest. But this is a pretty interesting forest. It's about 50,000 acres, but it's in kind of parcels. It's located in the central part of the state, and they've done an awesome job of putting together some good trail in through here. And if you're interested in exploring this area, I would highly recommend getting a book. It's a guidebook called the Yuari Lakes Region Trail Guide by Don Childrey. And it's got all the information you need to hike in this area. This hike right here in the Burkhead Mountain Wilderness, this is actually a wilderness area designated, I think, in 1984. It's not a big area. I think it's about 7,000 acres. There's a loop trail that is about 7 miles long. And if you do the 7-mile option, you would start at the Robbins Branch trailhead. That has long been kind of the traditional entry point. One of the reasons we generally don't do that particular trailhead is that it's a little harder to get to. The trailhead for the 11.8-mile option is off Tot Hill Road, which is just off of North Carolina 49 east of or west of Asheboro. This particular hike is, it's a great winter hike, mainly because it's largely a hardwood forest. So once the trees are gone, you can really see deep into the woods. There's some pretty good challenge on it, especially if you go in from the Tot Hill entrance. There's about a 2-mile trail that gets you to the main loop. And there's some nice climbs on that particular stretch. The Yuaris in general, I think the elevation ranges from about 350 feet to almost 1,200 feet. So there's a lot of elevation gain in part of the Yuari Mountains, and it makes it a lot more challenging than I think people expect when they show up here. So if you're doing a hike in the Yuaris, if you're doing one of these long hikes, just keep in mind that it's going to be a little more challenging than your typical hike in the Piedmont. This particular hike too, I know there's a picture that's got a ton of people here at the trailhead. That was the first hike that we ever did there. But you get in there, it's you rarely see any other people. It is open for hunting, so check and make sure what the hunting rules are for this particular area before you go in. This is, I think, in both Randolph and Montgomery counties, and that's how North Carolina Wildlife Resources determines their hunting seasons. It's in part by county. So, and to complicate things further, there is some hunting now allowed on Sundays. So it's always good to check and see what the local hunting regulations are. Also in the Yuaris, we've got the Yuari Trail, which is a north-south trail. It's a trail that used to run 40 miles. A lot of it was on private land, and the guy a fellow by the name of Joe Moffett, he was a scout leader out of Asheboro, and he created this trail. He got a little frustrated. This was in the 1970s, and he was a scout leader. The scouts had to complete a 50-mile hike for a merit badge, and they always had to go up to the mountains to make that happen because they couldn't find a trail that long. So he decided he was going to create one here in the Yuaris, and that trail lasted for about 15 years. A lot of it that was on private land was handshake agreements with the local landowners, and as the land changed hands, some of the new people who came in decided they didn't want the trail on their property. So I think the trail shrunk down to about 20 miles, and it's growing again. They just completed a section, I guess within the last 6 years, from an area called the Jumping Off Rocks Trailhead north to an area called the Walker Creek Trailhead. And that area in particular is an especially nice hike. I think that's about 6 miles. It goes over Little Long Mountain, which is the large picture where you've got the view. That is the one good view that you can get in the Yuaris, and that's from atop Little Long Mountain. If you start from the Jumping Off Rock Trailhead and hike north, you get to Little Long Mountain in about 2.5 miles. And there's a pretty good climb getting up there, but the reward is worth it. And then you continue on, and about another 2 miles, you get to King Mountain, which is the photo in the lower left. And that is the high point on the Yuari Trail. Now the Yuaris themselves get a little bit higher, but this is the actual high point that's on the Yuari Trail. Again, if you get the trail guide that I mentioned, you can put together some pretty good long hikes. There are several roads that go through the Yuaris, and most of them have trailheads. So you can piece together a pretty decent hike. I used to, in this group that I used to coach to do the charity hike, the last training hike we did was about 17 miles. And we had good access at both ends, and it made for just a really nice long day on the trail. And again, right now, if you're going, there is good color because it is mostly hardwood forest. So a real nice long hike that you can divide into much smaller options. Hanging Rock State Park, probably the closest thing that most of us have to a mountain-like experience. There are Hanging Rock right now is, because of the color and just because of its proximity to the Triad, is a real popular park, especially if you go and start from the visitor center. But if you go to the Indian Creek Trailhead, which is on the north end of the park, near the town of Danbury, you can hike up. It's about a 3.5 mile hike up to the visitor center. It's a good workout. It's a pretty hike. It starts out in a kind of a flattish hardwood forest, and then it just gradually gets steeper. And then you get into the two waterfalls, the two more popular waterfalls at Hanging Rock, Indian and Hidden. And then shortly you get up to the visitor center. From the visitor center, if you want to do a really good long hike, you can do the Moore's Knob loop, which is, I think, 4.6 miles. And that one's got some really good climbing on it. The picture in the middle here is the view that you get from up on top, and it's a pretty spectacular view. If you hit it on a good day, you can see Winston-Salem, you'll see the Blue Ridge escarpment to the west, and you can see the mountains in Virginia to the north. So a very good workout. Lots of scenic reward on this particular hike. Mountains to Sea Trail, which we'll talk about twice. The Eno River State Park section is a little over 10 miles, about 10.5 miles. It is broken into these sections that you see here, and is very easy to kind of piece together however long a hike that you want. One of the things that I like most about the Eno River section of the Mountains to Sea Trail is it's probably, well, it's one of the most scenic sections of the MST throughout the state. Eno River is a little bit like the mountains, and it's just a pretty gorgeous area. So the sections through here are generally pretty challenging. That's why, you could do the whole thing. This is an out and back, by the way. So even if you're just doing like the first section, the 1.8 mile section starts at the Pleasant Green access and goes to the quarry and back, but you're still going to be doing, a little over 3.5 miles. So it's a good workout, something to keep in mind when you're planning. And again, the link that I'll have that's got a connection to more information about how to plan your own trips, and that'll be at the end of the presentation. Crowder's Mountain. So there's the Ridgeline Trail that goes from the main part of the park, the Sparrow Springs entrance, all the way down to the South Carolina state line. And that is a 6.2 mile hike. If you're in that area and you've tried to go to Crowder's Mountain on the weekends, especially this time of year, it gets really crowded. So a good option is to start, there's an access that's down near the South Carolina state line, the Boulders access. That is a lot less crowded, and you can pick this trail up there. One of the nice things is you can pick this trail up and you can hike it north to the main part of the park. And that terrain is kind of a gentle ridge line. It's kind of, it's a really nice hike. It's not quite as challenging but it is kind of an ongoing up and down. You can also go from the Boulders Access and go into South Carolina, where there's about another 20 miles of trail in both a state park and a national military park that's on the South Carolina side. So there's a lot of good long hiking options out of that Boulders Access at Crowder's Mountain. So we're going to take a quick break here, getting into cool weather. Dressing for the cool weather is important, and we have a quick message from our friends at Great Outdoor Provision Company about the right kind of fleece for this type of weather. So this is about 3.5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up.
Hello, everyone. I am Johanna with the Great Outdoor Provision Company. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about cool to cold weather hiking and how to dress properly. I've been with the company for almost 12 years. I'm from Maine originally, so I definitely have experience doing outdoor things in cold temperatures. I think it's really fun. Now is a great time of year to get outside too, because the heat isn't as much of a deterrent and it's not wintry yet. So don't let that little bit of chill keep you indoors. You can still have a great time outside if you need to dress yourself properly. We are here to help you. So
I don't have sound, no.
fleece they've had for a very long time. It's called the
Now I do.
R1 fleece. A few things that make this better than your average fleece. So if you unzip this and look at the inside, it's got this interesting design here with this grid pattern. And
It's
there are
okay.
a few benefits to this. They've been able to take some of the weight off of this jacket, so it's not quite as heavy, by removing the fleece and slicing out pieces there. That also creates channels for warm air to move through. Again, your own sweat can be a big enemy on chilly days. You want to make sure that air is moving through so you can dry yourself out. So it's lighter and more ventilating because of that grid pattern. A lot of companies do this, not just Patagonia, so you could look around and see some other options as well. And then this also has a nice slick exterior to it. It slides nicely over this material. Where a traditional fleece, it's got that puffy texture on the outside, things are going to stick to it more. It's going to cling, has that Velcro effect. So this more technical fleece, and others like it that other brands make, that slickness is good. The slickness is also helpful for wind resistance and water. It's not going to be absorbed as easily as a traditional fleece, and it's going to prevent the wind from cutting through as much. One other option, a little bit less technical in terms of the grid pattern and the texture on the outside, but still a great piece that you can wear if it's chilly, is something simple like this too. This is called the Micro D fleece from Patagonia. Another really thin one. You could even, you could wear a t-shirt, or if you're me, you could wear a sports bra and just have this over it. You got plenty of warm air moving through, but it's puffy enough to create some warmth to keep you cozy. It's a little bit more porous, so wind can blow through a little bit more, which might be nice because that can dry you out to some degree. But just be mindful of whatever temperature you're going to be in. If it's particularly windy or wet, you may want something that's got a stronger material on the outside. So this is a nice piece to show you. everyone.
All right, well, thanks. Sorry about that. I thought I was just muting myself. Apparently I was muting the entire operation. So still trying to figure this thing out. Just a quick word on clothing. You all probably know this, everything that she went over, but I feel obligated to point some of these things out only because I still have people who are veteran hikers who show up wearing cotton socks to hikes. So the education for clothing is important. It's not just a comfort thing, but as we get into the fall and winter, it's also a basic survival thing. Okay, back to the Mountains to Sea Trail, this time at Falls Lake. So Falls Lake's got about a 60-mile run of the Mountains to Sea Trail, and this is in Wake and Durham counties, north of Raleigh. It's divided into 18 day hike sections, which means there are sections, they range from a little less than a mile to about 7 miles. Most of them are in the 3 to 4 mile range. And this basically just means that there are trailheads at enough spots where they can create about 18 different sections. And the beauty of this is that, again, you can go in and you can create the size hike that that you want to do. You can also, another thing that I really like about long hikes on the Mountains to Sea Trail is you can kind of custom make a hike that's suited to your mood. There's an area around the Hickory Hill boat ramp, for instance, where you can hike for about out and back about 7 miles, and it's a good hike, but it's completely flat. There's very little elevation in this area. So if you're looking at an easy long hike, you can put that together. There are other places, and for the most part, this is true, where the trail has got a lot more up and down going in and out of coves, and it's a little bit more challenging. One area, the Shinleaf area, if you head east, you can put in about a 7 mile hike that goes to North Carolina Highway 98 and then turns around and goes back. And that one is a little bit more challenging, more up and down. So you can go to the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail website and get quick descriptions of what the different sections are like. And that'll give you an idea of what kind of a hike you would be looking at. Another really good flat section that I like is along Red Mill Road. There's an access that's in the far western Durham County side. And if you do the Red Mill Road to Red Mill Road stretch, I think it's about 4.6 miles. If you do it out and back, it's, obviously a little over 9, but there's a lot of variety on that particular stretch. It's not an especially hard stretch. There's a couple places where there's a little bit of elevation gain, but there's a lot of variety. It starts on the north end in a bottomwoods forest, and then it spends some time along the lake, and it crosses a railroad track. It goes through several meadows. It's just, there's always something going on. And for a long hike, it's nice to have that kind of distraction. So again, in the article that's referenced at the end, you can get specifics on how to plan your own day hike along the Mountains to Sea Trail. But if you're looking for a long hike, the great thing about this is you can piece together so many different options that it's not like hiking the same trail over and over again. Got lots of options here. You also have lots of options on the Sarahtown Trail, which is a trail that links Pilot Mountain State Park on the west with Hanging Rock State Park to the east, and goes over a third mountain, Sarahtown Mountain, which is actually not public land. In fact, the trail doesn't actually go over Sarahtown Mountain. It kind of skirts around it. This trail is currently 21.6 miles in length, and there are 16 sections to it. I say that it's currently 21.6 miles because most of this trail is on private land. There's a lot of horse country in through here, and They go through periods where landowners decide that they don't want the trail on their property, so they end up changing the route, but it's almost always a consistent route. You just need to check the website before you head out to make sure that the sections that you're interested in hiking are still part of the trail, and they keep it updated really well. It's also good because you can do some shorter sections. This trail was designed for equestrians, so the trail itself is a little bit different. If it's after a rain or during a wet period, there are very few bridges, so there might be some wet crossings along the way. Trail is a little bit more interesting the closer that you get to Hanging Rock. And it enters Hanging Rock at the Torrey's Den area. So if you're starting on the east end and you're hiking toward Hanging Rock, you can actually hike up to, this is part of the, it's also part of the Mountains to Sea Trail. So you can take it into Hanging Rock, you can take it up onto Moore's Knob, which is what we're looking at on the right there. So lots of options there. It's a different kind of hiking again, because it is developed as an equestrian trail. So Pilot Mountain State Park is a park that gets an incredible number of visitors. We had park ranger last time, Maggie Miller, who is a ranger currently at Pilot Mountain, and she was talking about the fact that they now do shuttles from their visitor center up to the top of the mountain, to the parking lot at the top of the mountain. And that's really the only way to get up there after 10 a.m. on weekends, I think between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. But one of the great things about Pilot Mountain is it's got some secondary access points, the newest of which is Pilot Creek, which is on the north side of the mountain. And it's about a 3.5 mile hike in from Pilot Creek, from this trailhead that you see here, where the folks are hiking in, up to the picnic area, which is the other photo. And at that point, it connects with the Grindstone Trail, and the Grindstone Trail and the Mountain Loop Trail, you can take all the way around the outside of the mountain. And then Grindstone also goes up to the top. So you've got this basic 3.3 mile hike in, and you can build on it from there. You can actually hike up to the top. I think if you go up to the top, it's probably a total of about 5.5 miles. So you'd be looking at an 11-mile day. But a good workout. The Pilot Creek Trail there's some up and down on it. It's not until you get to that picnic area, though, that the elevation really picks up. So if you're looking for kind of a quiet hike in at Pilot Mountain, this is a good place to do it. Get to the picnic area, take a break, and then you can head back. Oops. And finally, we have one hike that's along the Blue Ridge Escarpment. And I put this hike in because it's pretty accessible. This is along the parkway at the base of Grandfather Mountain, kind of between Grandfather Mountain and Price Lake. And it's a stretch of trail. It's the Mountains to Sea Trail. It's also part of the Tanawa Trail. And you can go either way from this access point off of Holloway Mountain Road. If you go west, you go, and that's kind of my preferred way to go. It takes you toward Grandfather, and it takes you toward, I think it's the Boone Fork Trailhead. It gets a little bit more crowded when you get to Boone Fork, but the stretch from Holloway Mountain to there, it's got a lot of rolling meadow, and then it goes through this really incredible old growth forest that you're in for about a mile or so. And it's a very lovely stretch of trail. If you go east on Holloway Mountain Road on the MST, that will take you into Price Lake. And that's a very different kind of hike. You go along, you actually go along Boone's Fork, which is a creek, and much different. It's kind of rugged in through there. It's really pretty. But so they're two different hikes, really. If you go east, you're looking at a more challenging hike. If you're going west, you're going to be looking at going through pastures and something a little bit less challenging. So you can find, there are also, I think, 3 other hikes that are included in this story that's referenced. This was a blog from 2 weeks ago. I think it's 13 hikes that are included, and that will have more description, and it will also have links for where you can go to get details on how to do these hikes, including the trailhead information and more specifics, especially on like the Mountains to Sea Trail, where you can pick it up and put together your own kind of hike. So that is our lunch for today. If anybody has any questions, be glad to answer them. We can talk about other places if you have a specific place in mind, or looking for other types of recommendations. So anybody have any questions? And if you don't have one now, that's fine. And if you think of something later on, just send me an email message, joe@getgoingnc.com. Always glad to respond and provide whatever kind of insight and information that I've got.
Appreciate it. Can I see that link again? Can I see that link again?
Kind of, yeah, it's actually, if you just go to getgoingnc.com to the homepage, it will be the 3rd story down.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, without having to go through it's a kind of a convoluted link.
Yep, okay.
But yeah, you'll find the information there. So
Appreciate the info.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to be looking at hiking at the coast. There's about a three-month window where you can hike at the coast, where it's cool enough that there are no bugs, there are no snakes, and it is a pretty special experience. So we're going to take a look at that. So make a note to join us on Thursday, November 11th.
Thank you.